Hello, this is Jon Speelman with my audiovisual version of column 192. Used to be an agony column, now it's just a column. Today has been mild agony. I started, done a couple of minutes, and I got interrupted. So I started again and I turned on the mute button on my microphone, glory be. So this is actually take 3, which is rather more than I normally do. And I'm going to be very brisk. About it and get through the busyness. So I'm carrying on talking about the World Championship, and last time, a fortnight ago, I used did it through the prism of when I was a second for Vishwanathan Anand against Garry Kasparov. And so I was talking about the anatomy of a match, how people build their matches up. This time, the present match started with Ding all at sea. He was very nervous in game 1 but held on. In game 2, he was a wreck really. He was nothing like himself and he lost. And this has parallels in the first match that I ever got involved with, or I didn't get involved with, that I was interested in, which was in 1963, Botvinnik versus Petrosian in Moscow. And my first ever chess book, serious chess book, of course I had books like Chess for Children and such like, was Bob Wade's account of the match, which my mum got me sometime in 63, so probably when I was either 6 or just 7. So my birthday is October, the match was March to May, early May. So I'm looking at how Petrosian recovered from a terrible defeat to take his first victory against Botvinnik. Ding took only one game to recover against Nepo with game 3, in which he made a fairly sensible draw. And then he won game 4, but I'm recording this after game 5, when Nepo took the lead again. Played a pretty good white square game against Ding, what I call a white square game, where he exploited weaknesses in his opponent's white squares. Right, anyway, so I've called this 60 years on, which makes sense, and I'm going to get down to business with the games from this match, which should be in column 192, which is down here, from the Petrosian Botvinnik. So what happened was Petrosian, he'd never beaten Botvinnik before. He plays him in game 1. He plays bishop takes knight here, of course, rather than getting involved in some huge mess. And here he does something a bit... Well, he played a move that Geller had played... Samushevsky had played against Yefim Geller in the famous Zurich Candidates tournament. Geller played bishop f5. Reshevsky put his knight in f4 as bishop in e2. Got plus equals, nearly won. Eventually, Geller just held him. But the very simple move rook e8 stymies him, because he can't put the knight in f4, because it gets taken, doesn't it, by Jon Queen, which is a bit unfortunate, and already I think totally discombobulated Petrosian. He took 5 minutes. You can play knight c1 or knight g3. Not much else to do. He went there, in fact. Botvinnik quietly started to advance against the knight. Botvinnik clearly knew that Petrosian was uncomfortable already, it's obvious, and he was just making trouble. I don't know if he could ever play c5 in this position, maybe he didn't. He just got his pieces out. Round about here, it's unpleasant, and this is a horrible move. I think he thought that if knight f1, then there might be something with h3, g3, bishop g4 maybe, trying to tie white down, but I'm not enormously convinced. And, well, I don't know. I imagine there will be some way to play the positions somehow. Perhaps anyway, h3 is a horrible move. even if it's necessary, which I think Engines don't think it is. Foul weakness on the dark squares. He's just all over the place, really. He didn't know what to do. I don't know what that's. King G1, I mean, you don't take yet because something happens, I imagine, but, well, take Queen, take King F1, presumably Bishop H3 would be at least interesting. But, by the way, earlier on, I think apparently here in this diagram you can play Knight G5, and apparently Knight G5 followed by Bishop H3 causes a major incident. Well, it's obvious it might do. This is just winning for black, I think. But, I mean, the thing is that this would involve some calculation, some possibility of things going wrong, and there's no reason in the world why your man should take any risks at all at this stage. He's got such a good position. I don't know if you can play Knight D2 here and try to play Rook F1 and Queen D8 or something. I mean, it's not, it's a little bit messy. So he just went Knight G7, Botvinnik, probably without much thought. And just thought he'd get his pieces out. And he had the advantage, obviously. Well, what did happen is that at some moment, Petrosian panicked and played G4, which is a horrible move. It's just a disgusting move. I mean, even I suppose he was worried that F5 and F4 would happen. I can see it's very bad, but F4 is so foul, messing your pawns up. It's all really awful. I think Knight D3 actually was that's basically just winning. So I don't know quite why he didn't do that, but if rook takes E3, if pawn takes D4, if you take this, perhaps he could have tried taking this Petrosian, but I mean, you should win in the end, but at least you could fight a little bit. And normally Petrosian was more than ready to give up the exchange. Liked doing it. Obviously it's not very pleasant in this position. But he actually... It's desperate, I think. If the king moves, you can take the bishop and plant the knight in D3. F5, you can just... What do you do? Probably just go away and just... I mean, white doesn't really get real play. And rook to there, check now, won a bishop. I think Petrosian was in time trouble by now. Horrible way to start the match. So what does he do? Nothing. He just plays normal game the next game. They said something about how Botvinnik's opponents had tended to panic, and you just get on with it. You can play D3 in this position as well. He played Knight C3 later in this. Knight D2, Knight E4. You didn't have to go Knight F4 and take, but it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So white's got some initiative still, because black's a little bit attacked. I think H6 is playable actually, but he went there, and now Botvinnik cashed in. He couldn't really attack, so he just played sensible moves. By the way, probably better to take back on D5 the pawn than the queen. Here the position actually is still, that's not a great move. Engine so that knight takes, pawn takes queen E6 is okay, but, well, it's not very okay. I mean, you take queens and you're a little bit better as white, you would think. Normally. But maybe it's okay, I don't know. Interestingly, the engine, my engine, Stockfish, wants to play Rook C3 here, which I never really consider. But this is, now Queen E5 would have been good for white. But Botvinnik at this stage decided to bail out, and that the moves that were actually played were these. Obviously white regains the knight, then black takes the d pawn when he wants, then it's a draw. So that was a sensible game by Petrosian, which will have calmed him down. Then he actually got the advantage. They're playing a Queen's Indian. Nowadays people play rook e1 or bishop f4 sometimes. They didn't then, they almost always played knight c3. And now bishop d2 or queen c2 were sort of criticalish moves, but Petrosian was really interested in playing the quietest positions possible. Apparently, I think you're supposed really to do this, and this is supposed to be equal. I mean, clearly it could be equal or could not. You don't know without analysing it. If the white knight were on f3, so it's close to c6, then this position would be a bit better for white, according to my engine as well. I checked with an engine, but I mean, it seemed obvious it might be. But with the knight so far from c6, 4 moves from c6, it's not really a problem, apparently. Anyway, queen d7 takes here. Now it's starting to be a little bit unpleasant. You've got pressure against c5 and d5 with the famous hanging pawns. I assume he should have gone rook fc8. He went here. Doesn't look great. So white's got a bit of pressure. And what happened eventually was that Botvinnik tried h4 sort of reason, and h5 is a good idea. You don't want to give him too many white squares. Botvinnik attempted to bail out. Knight d7. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not too bad. He'd missed this actually, I think. Don't know what he thought he was doing otherwise. And now white gets some advantage. Sorry, as I said, this is attempt number 3, and they got to this ending. h4 is the sealed move, and it happens that Botvinnik is just about drawing. It's quite close. If you play rook takes h4, as you can imagine, this ending ends up equal. White wins the h-pawn, but is further away from the pawns. He gets king c2 in against king takes a3. There's no way to do better than that. But later on there was a moment. I don't know if you can go king e5 here as well. I think you can do that, but you can take as well and do this one. And because it's a rook's pawn, it's a draw, as most people will know, I think. The thing is, you can't... Eventually you get in queen b3 check against king b1, but after king a1, black's in stalemate, so the white king can't approach. So, I mean, they played on, and eventually Botvinnik drew. f3 was a bit of a weakness. Petrosian managed still to do a little bit, but not very much. King f7, I think you'd go probably rook a4, f5, rook g4 would be okay. Well, I mean, white can get in f7, but it doesn't matter. You just give checks and go back to the f file when necessary. You leave the rook, obviously, on the g file and nothing happens. G and f e files, there's nothing white can do. So draw. So that's game 3. Game 4, Botvinnik got a bit of pressure. This interesting move order, you go knight f6 so you can play d5, but white does have queen b3 here, and bishop c4. Knight d5 is not so bad. This is a position you can play. Both players can play. This position actually, I'd have thought this should be okay for black, but apparently it's a bit more dangerous than I thought. Engine suggests taken out h4, which I think has been played, but it's more of a 2023 move than a 1963 move. I would have thought. I mean, of course, Botvinnik did sometimes play h4 or g4 in the opening. Now, what actually happened was that they played some moves, and Botvinnik never really got very much. I mean, he's gotten c4, but now it's not. And here he decided to bail out. And I think we can safely say that the reason he did this was because he didn't like his pawn structure very much. Guy took. And he took there. And they agreed to draw. There's nothing very much going on here. It's certainly not better for black. Better for white at this point. If anybody, it's slightly better for black, maybe. I would say. And so to game 5, which is a very famous game. I've given an introduction here about how Petrosian had re-established psychological equilibrium, if not the match score, which was still one up in Botvinnik's favour. You saw in the... Sorry, what's this? Yeah. C5 is the critical move. Petrosian, you see, has been playing very, very quietly in the opening, not attempting to do anything clever. And apparently he told his second before the match, that if they reached this position, then Botvinnik would lose, which shows quite an understanding of Botvinnik's strengths and weaknesses. That's a little bit silly, I think. Indicate to e7 first, you'd have a more ergonomic position. Because what's happened is that black has a lead in development, but he did have a lead in development. But now it's starting to... The lead is starting to dissipate. If you take an a2, then you go rook to there, take and take. And you've got a big advantage as white, a very big advantage for such a huge horse. Going to be most unpleasant for black. I mean, black can defend the b4 pawn for the moment, but it's just really foul. Then if you could go bishop b5 there. But I'd probably take, and if rook b8 I'll take and go and take the b pawn and then play chess. Not going to be good. I was thinking bishop b5, I'll just tell you what I was thinking about. I was thinking bishop b5, f4, rook b8, check here, check here, check here. And now I just have to be careful. I mean, you can try to go b3, b2, so maybe I just go knight g4 here, and I must have a big advantage, presumably. But I'm just wondering about this. It might be a way to play, because you really want the rook behind that pawn. So bishop b5. If I take, I was thinking of going this move. Take here, and that looks like, I mean, you can take and play h3 and then go and take the b pawn, I suppose. Let's just do that. Let's go take h3. No way, really, this king. Now, how do I do this? Do I go g4 first? Probably go... Oh, I can... If I take, then he can go king d5. I've got knight c3 check, king f5. I've got f3 and g4, but the bishop is attacking the e-pawn, which is annoying. So probably I do it this way, actually. Go g4 here. And then I can just take on b4. He can't stop me from taking on b4 and coming back and starting to play chess, and it's very unpleasant. Anyway, what actually happened was this. I don't know, he could maybe have played a6, and he got his pawn isolated away from the A and B pawns. I think bishop a3 was still okay, actually. This should be okay for, I imagine this is okay for black, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'd imagine that the rook and knight are fighting fairly hard. Let me just ask its Sublime Majesty while we're here. Haverbox says equal, Stockfish says plus something, yeah. Okay, wait a minute. Sorry, I do need to leave this. Stockfish. That's like white. Ugh, sorry. Oh God, I'm tired after all. At my third attempt, I was like white. Okay. Excuse me. So, anyway, what happened was that they played this way, and you could have played bishop takes knight at almost any time, but he didn't. He could play rook d2, but then king b3 threatens to take and to go king d2, so it doesn't really help at all. Maybe you could do that, king b3, and then go rook d1, and then the white king would be further from the action. Now let's go rook d1. Yeah, that would be better actually. Okay. So this is what happened. And now Botvinnik could have taken, probably should have taken, rook h1, and in this position Petrosian played the iconic move knight e4, saying, have my pawn, you're not going to be able to make a pass pawn, I'm going to be able to attack. King d8 is no good because of king e5, and so to go there, and after g3 it's crucial that the rook can't go to h5. So on we went. b4, king e5, bishop b7, there would be rook d2 check, which wouldn't help. And the king has penetrated osmotically into the interstices of black's position, as one of John Nunn's opponents used to say sometimes. It is a monster. This was the sealed move, very famous position. And I believe it was, there was a mastermind thing about World Championship past. Where was the white king in the adjourned position of the famous fifth game? Well, everybody know, well, people who know about this know that the king was somewhere around about g7. But whether he was in g7 or f7 or g8, you know, strikes me as a little bit OTOs. Anyway, he went there. Don't know if I mean OTOs actually. Nice attacking by Petrosian, knight g5, goes some checks. Rook d7, I don't know if you can go knight e6 maybe. Probably good. Here he resigned. I mean, if he moves, there's a threat of knight h7, and actually it's hard to do much. I've got some variations. h5, rook takes. No, h5, rook takes, and nothing very much has occurred. King b7, knight takes here, 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 traps the bishop. That's the prettiest variation, probably. That's really unfortunate for black, isn't it? That you're going to go knight c6 and win the bishop. King b8, take here. Again traps the bishop. It's just plus minus. You can go f4 first if you want to, it doesn't matter. The pawn ending is won by several tempi, however you do it. So, very famous game. I'm going to go Control R. My third attempt, I hope, has been successful. I have to say I'm already on the wine by now as a result, not as a result of this. I was streaming game 5 today as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And I'll be back, not in a fortnight, because a fortnight after this goes out, which is tomorrow, which is Sunday, which is the 16th, the fortnight will be the 30th. So I'll be back, presumably, is it the 7th, I suppose. April the 30th will be the last day, will it not? So it will be the 7th of May I'll be back. I hope you enjoy the match as it continues, as I shall be. I'll try to stream a bit more at some point. And I'll see you in 3 weeks. Right, and I am broadcasting. Good.